lost everything and I had nothing to show. In the end, that made me realize that, what specific people that I used to look at and say, you know what, I'm better off.
Just before we go further, on this point here, something that users and caregivers are also very guilty of is minimizing the actual type of drug. So, for example, they'll say, "No, why do I need to be rehabilitated? I'm only in Dah." The caregiver would say, "No, there's nothing wrong with them. They're only smoking weed." And in actual fact, a drug is a drug, whichever way you call it.
On that note, many people smoking weed. I think in my years of recovery, I've witnessed so many youngsters coming into our homes and being tested just for weed, and some of the things come out of
Yeah,
weed. So
yeah.
I don't know what's in that anymore. Uh, I really don't know. The stats you said earlier on, Mukhtar, it takes up to
5 to
7 to 10
7
years.
years, yeah, for caregivers.
So, yeah. Looking back, what did denial cost you?
Costed me my life. And honestly speaking, that now I'm in recovery, to get back what I've lost, obviously it's impossible. But now I'm striving, obviously, to look at things differently and build on what I lost slowly, but obviously not rushing and working towards it slowly. And on that specific fact you mentioned about, cannabis, Zol, for example. In today's time, if you really look at it, there's so many cannabis shops around since it's legal. But you know what? The fact that people don't realize it's a form of addiction. And it all started from my whole life started by using cannabis and obviously progressed to the next because I was always chasing a different high.
Fadil and Suhail and Samir. So previously the stat was caregivers take between 5 to 7 years before actually seeking out meaningful help, right? It also says, another statistic says that addicts themselves, without the help of caregivers, would take between 7 to 10 years to come out, to actually look for assistance because they're stuck in denial. Now, this point here goes back to the point about short-term fixes and long-term fixes. How is a recovery supposed to be managed, or how is addiction cured? Those are questions that everybody asks. And if you look at our community and our people today, everything is fast. We want the fastest car, the fastest cell phone, the fastest internet, the fastest food. We also want the fastest type of recovery. Now, if you look at recovery in itself, yes, I know we're speaking about denial, but one of the things that for me will also attach itself to denial is the fact that we don't want this process to play itself out in its natural organic form. We want a quick fix. Now, if it takes a person 7 to 10 years to try and solve the problem of addiction, how do we expect a 21-day program to solve that problem? Because all we're doing in that space of time is simply a detoxification of the person without addressing any of the underlying issues. And this is where the RAUF program is very, very different compared to other rehabilitation centers. So I'd like to ask you also, Fadil, at any time, unfortunately today we don't have any hufas with us, but generally this question is asked to them. But at any time, did you ever use the fact that, listen, I still pray my salah 5 times a day or whatever number of times a day it may be. I still keep my roza during Ramadan. I still give my zakat and so on. So I am not an addict. Did that thought ever cross your mind?
100% correct many times. And I always use that also in my using a way when I needed to score. I always used to tell them, for example, back at home, if I needed to get away, I told them I'm going for salah, but where I was in a merchant, using that as a front line.
The spirituality part is a strong part, because I prayed my salahs. I went for zikrs. I've been out there when it came to my spirituality. And this is where denial used to be at its most, at its peak for me, was that I used to say, nobody knows what I'm going through. Only Allah knows what I'm going through. So He is most merciful. And all that nonsense used to come out of me. I think, being in the program, I've realized that you can't go from one extreme to the other. It's not going to work that way. And it never has. And I mean, life has only spiraled. When I was in my peak of addiction, it's just gotten worse and worse. And how can we even, ask Allah for help knowing that we're doing wrong?
So we're now going to talk a bit about denial in recovery. right? So you guys are still early in recovery. Suhail, you're a bit longer in recovery. So people always assume that denial disappears once you stop using, right? That once you are clean for a couple of months or maybe a few years, that you are recovered. But we know it doesn't. To the three of you sitting here today, does denial still creep in? And what does it look like now?
Honestly speaking, denial creeps in time at time. And another thing is, we never recovered. We always will be recovering. We only recovered when we're 6 feet under. And you see, denial comes in many forms. Obviously, what we taught in the program, I will take it this time so seriously that anything which goes against this RAUF program, I feel I slip back into denial. The fact that I can identify and I'm not doing anything about it puts me back into denial.
Yeah.
So denial is something you'll always slip in, and obviously it's what you're going to do on how to correct it to come out of it.
Samir, anything to add?
Yeah, for me, it's a sense, how I keep track of it, how I keep track of it. Keep checking my attitude and my character. The pride and the ego and all start coming out. That's when I know, you know what? This is alarm signs now. I need to start checking myself. I need to start introspecting deeper and checking on, where am I slipping? Where am I going wrong? Like I said, it's a full package. It's just not just the addiction. It's everything that came with it, that bad character and stuff.
I think the easiest part for me, I'm listening to the two brothers here who are currently in the center still. The easiest way to tap your way out of denial is being in the center. The question you asked, Mukhtar, I honestly, when it comes to denial in recovery, the longer you're in recovery, the more the denial creeps in. That's my honest view on denial. And to keep up with what the brothers are talking about, not being in the center is much more harder work. So for me, yes, denial is constantly there. Sometimes to take myself out of it takes a couple of days, sometimes a couple of weeks. But that means coming into the center and really speaking to the people, speaking to my caregivers, speaking to Rauf, speaking to the recoveries to try and get myself out of it at times. So it is very difficult.
I think it's also a sense of not forgetting where you're coming from, which plays a big part in me keeping check on myself. Because, like we said, we speak about on the outside, if you don't know when you're in denial, your family tells you it's all right, it's all right. When you start telling yourself, no, I'm all right, that's a big problem.
Research and experience both show us that relapses start mentally before it starts physically, right? What warning signs should a person be looking out for, whether in addiction or recovery or as a caregiver? What warning signs would they be? You want to say something as well, Fadil?
I think overconfidence also plays a big role in this denial because there's a certain point when you get into your recovery. This is what my experience was. Over 3 years, the overconfidence start kicking in where you think, you know what, you got everything under control. But then if you really sit back and you look at it now that through the introspection, which Rauf obviously taught me, which I'm doing now constantly, which I never do previously, I identified that, you know what, after 3 years, I started being so overconfident where I thought everything was okay and I could do without the program and all those type of things. But sitting back now and I really sit and I think about it, all my irrational behavior started displaying, which I couldn't identify, which I thought was normal without using. But that was a relapse to me already.
Suhail, anything to add?
Mukhtar, I think the one thing we were taught in Rauf was lock us up in a room and take the drug away, and there's nothing. It's easy to get off the drug.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately it's our behavior that leads to that. So mentally, no one just goes and relapses. There's a mental buildup. And for me, I have to keep on checking myself to see that, you know what, am I off track? I've learned to be very open and honest with regard to my caregivers. So if they see that there's not much communication, then they go and offload it to Rauf and say, you know what, something is not right with this guy. And then from there, before anything happens, it's already in place. I think it's more a plan that we have to have in action, being in recovery, because like I say, denial doesn't leave us.
For sure. So let's speak directly now to caregivers, right? None of us here are caregivers, but I'm sure from your experience, you'll be able to answer on behalf of your caregivers. So studies show that between 40 to 50% of caregivers suffer from anxiety or depression, often silently.
And more than 70% engage in enabling behaviors, paying debts, covering consequences while believing they are helping.
Now, we may think that enabling or helping, in inverted commas, is actual help, but enabling doesn't shorten addiction, it actually extends it. Listen to these figures here. Children in these homes are 3 to 4 times more likely to struggle with substance abuse themselves because the parents are, in a way, weak, call it that from a, weak, from a caregiving point of view. So if I were to ask the three of you here today, what's one thing that families need to stop doing today if they truly want to help? Now, obviously, this will be from your experience and from your own personal, family's point of view. What do you, if you had to have a family today, or if you were to give any advice to the families out there listening today, what would that one piece of advice be?
For me, is keep your loved ones close. And trust. Trust is a big problem. We tend to trust too easily, and we don't monitor actually what's really going on in our kids' lives as such.
Fadil?
I would say if you are faced with your situation, don't put it under the mat and cover it. Deal with it.
Expose it.
Expose it.
Sohail, anything from your side? I know you have a teenage daughter, so you can tell us a bit.
Yeah, the thing is, you've got to watch. You've got to have a close eye. You got to have proper communication, a close eye. Times have changed from the way we grew up to the way our kids are growing up today, and I think more so open communication, especially teenagers out there. You got to know what's going on in their lives, who their friends are. It's very important where they're going, what they're up to. I think more so it's just about keeping a close eye.
As you're saying, things have changed from the time when we were young to now. Back in the day, we could go out with our friends and come back, in the night was, leave in the morning and come back at night. Nowadays, you can't do that. You can't, be with people because you don't know if you're going to be spiked. You don't know if there's going to be some attempt on you from an assault point of view. You don't know what your condition is going to be like. And we as caregivers, as parents, and I speak for myself first, is we need to ensure that we take responsibility for our youngsters out there. If we're sending them to a party, or we're sending them to not even a party, we shouldn't even be sending them to parties. But if we're sending them to an outing or to for example, a fair or whatever the case may be, we need to be there with them. And as you said very rightly, we need to know who they're with, what they're doing, why they're there, and how much of money they're spending. Because if we don't do that, we are essentially buying the drugs for them. We are essentially buying their bad habits because we are paying for it.
The reason I speak about this from a personal experience is that I was allowed to go out with someone who was from a prominent family who no one thought was doing drugs, and that just took me deep into addiction. So I was going under false pretenses that I'm going with someone that's trustable, that's upstanding, that someone's going to have, good values, and I'm going to learn from this person. But actually, it was to the detriment of myself in addiction.
For sure, for sure. Now, when we speak about denial, we only think about the drugs and so on and so on, and it's only that Western aspect of it. But there's also something that's called spiritual denial. Now, everything we're speaking about today, and also in the past programs, is what we do at RAUF, right? So, recovery does not take place if the person does not reconnect to their creator. Now, RAUF is not a rehab center meant only for Muslims, but it functions primarily as an Islamic-based rehabilitation center. So we do have brothers and sisters from other religious faiths actually joining us in the program. And we also encourage them to get closer to their God of their understanding. But with that, we need to understand that dua without action becomes avoidance, right? Research shows families who combine faith with boundaries see better outcomes.
Tawakkul is trusting Allah after taking responsibility, not instead of it.
Correct. Now, we'll find that, on social media platforms, and I've seen this numerous times, where some person will complain about their spouse or their child experimenting on drugs or even in full blown addiction. And the number one comment, or the majority of the comments, say one thing: make dua, read this, make dua, read that. Take him for Jamaat, send him here, send him there, send her here, send her there. We need to start taking action. As a community, as caregivers, as people, we need to start taking action, because as Brother Suhail said right now, tawakkul is trusting Allah after taking responsibility, not instead of it. So yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us, but we have to make that effort in order for us to find the straight path as well. So we almost at the end of our show. We got about 10 minutes left. Denial keeps us comfortable, but comfort in the life of an addict can be deadly. Recovery begins when truth becomes more important than image. And this is something our families and our community need to understand. Drug addiction does not discriminate between, your surname and my surname, or your, race and my race, or your religion and my religion, or your gender and my gender. Drug addiction affects everybody. I mean, if you come to any support group program at RAUF, you will see that we have black, white, Indian, colored, Muslim, non-Muslim, male, female, in all of the support group programs. That's how the split is. So this problem affects us all. Whether you're rich or you're poor, drug addiction will creep into your home. Don't think that drug addiction is only for those people that have the cruel part of life. Drug addiction is also there for those people that actually have too much of it. So you want to say something?
Just something that popped in my mind was, there's so many listeners that are saying, but no, my children or my spouse or whoever it is, they good. There's nobody having a problem. Alhamdulillah for that. But I just want to mention that for the listeners out there, on a Friday night, if you all are available, just come and hear what the programs are all about. Rauf for me has changed my life, alhamdulillah. And there's many people out there that have not been on the path and still come for the programs on a Friday night. And they say, they tell us how it's changed their lives. So, it's something that just popped to my head, that people come out there, listen to the programs and see what it's all about. Now that we're touching on spirituality, I think there's a lot to learn more on spirituality, and I've learned it there.
Recovery is a very holistic change. It's not just staying away from drugs. It's lifestyle. It's understanding. It's accepting. It's honesty, right? In one sentence, to brothers here today, what has honesty over denial given you today? Suhail, I know you're clean for the longest amount of time from all of us sitting here today. What has honesty given you over in comparison to denial?
Alhamdulillah, from the very beginning, coming out from the path, my job was in place. The same people that I've done down have taken me back. That alone was a sign of opening. My family has taken me back for all that I've done. So there's no words that it can explain, just by being honest, just by being in the right path, how many doors have opened up. I mean, I think, Mukhtar, there's been quite a few Umrah trips in the time that I've been clean, which I never really had before that, So doors have opened. Allah has been so merciful. But yes, with that, a lot of challenges have come along as well. But I think by the honesty and not being in denial or fighting this denial thing, life has a different meaning.
Samir?
Yeah. Honesty. Honesty has given me meaning, perspective to understand what my role is as a son, as a brother, as a grandson, as a husband, as a father, and as a Muslim.
Due to time constraints, I won't let Brother Fadil answer the question. But to our listeners out there today, if anything that we said made you feel uncomfortable, then that discomfort might be your awakening. Denial destroys quietly, but truth heals completely. A word of advice to everybody out there as well. We are coming now to the tail end of the holidays, December holidays. Schools are going to be opening up soon. Everyone's going to get back to the grind, back to work, and so on. The festive mood hasn't left us yet. If we are letting our young ones, our youngsters go out, we need to know where they are. We need to know who they would. We need to know what they're doing. For those of us that are struggling with denial or struggling with addiction and maybe possibly had a relapse over the last month, RAUF is available. Our programs did not stop throughout the December holidays. Our programs continued every single week as they were. Maybe the location may have changed, maybe the day may have changed, but the program still continued once a week. If you have a problem, you are more than welcome to give us a call. Our number is 031-269-3662. Let me repeat that. That's our office number, 031-269-3662. Alternatively, if you feel that you can't make that phone call because, for whatever reason, you may not have the funds available or the time available, you can WhatsApp us. The number you can WhatsApp us on is 060-728-3786. Let me repeat, 060-728-3786. We do have updates. We do have information posted on Facebook, Instagram. The RAUF Youth Team Facebook and Instagram pages are also live. There's a YouTube channel that has some information on it. And we do have our RAUF website, which is also available for anybody out there. And if we have caught the attention of any teachers or governing body members, one of RAUF's main directives is the youth. And what we do is we go to schools on a regular basis and we do awareness programs and talks at the schools free of charge. All you got to do is ask for us and we'll be there. And inshallah, we can try and help wherever we can. We have come to the end of our show. I'd like to wish all our visitors from outside of KZN, a safe trip back when they do decide to leave, to go back home. I know it's difficult to leave Durban to go back to wherever it is you're staying. But have a safe trip and enjoy the rest of your holiday. And don't forget, last day of the Durban Summer Souk, join us here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The Al Ansar Foundation, Dawah, Tarbiyah and Education, establishing the foundations of Islamic civilization in South